Welcome, welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
I mean,
and you can see what I am sharing at this point. So we had started to discuss the meal offering, and we got a little bit into it. In other words, by meal here we mean offering made of flour. You know, I did actually look up the word mincha because of the fact that it means gift and it means afternoon and stuff like that. And I'm going to see if I can actually get it for you again and so that you can actually see what the Jastrow dictionary makes of it. So I'm going to actually go there and I'm going to change the share because I do want to, let you know that I did follow through on that origin. So let me quickly see if I can find it for you. Give me a moment. All right, I think this is where it should be. And there we are. All right, I'm gonna have a new share now. And here you see a page of the Jastrow dictionary, and it's the word mincha right there. And here we are, two meanings. Here, this tells you there's more than one meaning. So there's number one, and here is number two. Okay, but he says compare the preceding. So mincha comes from lanuach, right? To rest,
yeah,
Okay,
I said that yesterday after you were gone.
Okay, to lay down, to offering present. Okay, and here is afternoon, to decline. Remember, declination. Afternoon prayer. That's by association, etc., etc. So there's certainly this one word, this one root of to lay down, right? To lay down is taken to mean by extension to rest, okay, or to lay down the gift, right? To be able to present someone, meaning you are laying it down in the sense of you are absolving yourself of ownership of that particular item. And then presenting it to someone else. And that idea of relinquishing ownership and laying it down, that act is that particular thing. So it all gets connected here, as you can see. So it was good. I was happy to look it up and to see what I could find out. So now we're going to go back into this. So we were in the middle. Remember, we had talked about a komets, right? A fistful or a handful, and that it's really not a word that's translatable into, because it's a specific kind of handful and it's a specific way of which to create a handful. So I'm trusting that you can remember from yesterday, what I tried to demonstrate to you.
The three fingers.
Exactly. The middle, the ring finger, and the pinky. Okay. So I'll call levonota with all of its frankincense, right? So we know that it was flour, fine flour, it was oil, and it was also frankincense. That combination. So it says all the frankincense, levad kol halavona, meaning this portion of flour and oil, which is not all of the flour and oil, but then aside from all the frankincense, yeha kometz maleh. So this is this kometz needs to be filled. So you have a full kometz along with all its frankincense that is being presented. This is how I understand this. Levonata VaYikra. So the connection of these two words together. So VaYikra means to turn into smoke. Af halavona b'haktara. So he says he wants to make it clear that the frankincense is included in the part that went up to turn into smoke on the altar. Malo kumtso misalta umishmana, right? A full kometz of its flour and of its oil. Ha. So he says, consequently, im kamatz va'ala beyado, if he made this kometz and on his hand, I think this is what he means, and went up onto the altar, right, to be burned, in his hand, gargir, even a crumb of melach, of salt, or koret levona, if it went up on his hand, or a particle of frankincense, psula, the offering is not acceptable. So this is interesting, right? So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I understand what it's saying. That the only thing that goes up in his hand in this kometz has to be within this kometz only the flour and the oil. In other words, it's saying that his kometz has to be totally filled from its flour and its oil, dafka, and nothing else. That's what Rashi's trying to point out to us. So that if he took this kometz, and because it's going to have salt as well, as you'll see, and if there were any salt, a little, a grain of salt or a particle of the levona in this kometz that he was taking, it's no good. It has to only be filled from its solet and from its shemen, from its fine flour and from its oil. That's the point being made. So that's the point of the statement here in the Torah. Askarata, that it comes from the word zachar, meaning to remember. So it's remembrance portion. Here we go. So what kind of remembrance are we talking about? Hakometz ha'oleh lagavoha. So this little piece, how much do you really get if you bend over 3 fingers onto the palm of your hand and you take of this oil and this flour? How much? It's just a part of it, right? Ha'oleh lagavoha, which is taken up on high. And I think here it means basically to God, that's presented to God, but it could also be understood the fact that they had to go up the altar to present it. Huzikaron hamincha. Okay, it is a remembrance of the entire mincha, of the entire flour offering or meal offering. Shebo niskar ba'aliyah. I'm reading it this way, and I'm not putting a comma here, right? That through it, and that within it, in this going up, it is remembered, it is referenced, something like that, right? Letova, for goodness, ulenachat ruach, and for pleasure. So what exactly he means, what Rashi means here, right? So I think I'm right. Shebo niskar. Okay, so zichron hamincha shebo niskar ba'aliyah, because through it, it is understood through this going up of this meal offering, this little part. It is the entire offering. I believe he's referring here that it's seen from a divine point of view for goodness and for pleasure, meaning God, that this is a essentially good act that this person is doing. In other words, we might think, well, if it's just a little part of it, maybe we wouldn't think it was such a good act, right? But a nachat ruach is also satisfaction. That's another good way to translate nachat ruach. And by the way, notice the word nachat, mincha, noach, all that, right? Of spirit.
So mine, I just wanted to mention, mine says through it, its owner who
Uh-huh.
brought the sacrifice is
Yeah.
remembered for the good, and then in parentheses, causing God, and then contentment.
Right. So yeah, okay. I
So
mean,
it's not so much that the sacrifice, it's the flour was remembered for good, but the person bringing it up.
yes. Uh-huh. Interesting. Okay. Um, okay. So when it says shebo, right, it can mean through him, or it can be through it. And I have to tell you, because the preceding little phrase is hamincha, right, of the meal offering, I'm thinking of the bo here means through it. But I will tell you, as
Yes,
I
it says
right,
through it, the
right,
meal offering.
right. Oh,
Then it
niskar
says
ba'al.
through it,
Sorry, that's
it's
correct. Sorry, Lauren, I read this wrong. Okay, I read this as aliyah, and this is not aliyah. It's ba'aleha, which means its owner, the one who brings. So thank you so much. This is the beauty of us doing this together, and why they say you can't really learn by yourself. So I read this wrong, because I read this as ba'aliyah, meaning it's going up, and it's not. The word is ba'aleha, meaning the owner of the mincha, the one who brought the mincha. So it's not ambiguous. It's very clear that it does refer to the owner of the meal offering, the one who presented the meal offering. So that he's got, yes, thank you. Do we need to clarify anything further there, or are we good on this?
good.
Okay, all right. Or anyone who's here, okay. Okay, all right. Let's go on back into this sentence here. Here we go. V'hanoteret min hamincha, and that which is left over, because obviously he only took part of it, right? Of the meal offering, that which is left over of the meal offering, la'aron ulevanav, goes to Aaron and his children, his sons. Kodesh Kodashim, it is a most holy offering, Me'ishe Hashem, from the fire offerings of God. So it's interesting, I'd mentioned this before, that this mincha offering, right, which is probably the least expensive offering that one can bring, is considered Kodesh Kodashim. It's considered most sacred, most sacred. So again, when it says to Aaron and his sons, so obviously Aaron is not going to live forever, but Aaron represented the Kohen Gadol, which is exactly, he was the high priest. So he says, in general, the high priest, notel chelek barosh, he is entitled to take a part of it at the beginning, at the very beginning. Shelo b'machloket, which is not equally distributed. In other words, they don't, first of all, he helps himself to what is left over, okay? V'hahediot, and the regular priests, b'machloket, they divide it up equally. So whatever the high priest leaves over of the meal offering that's going to be consumed by the priests, they then take that remainder, divide it up equally, and then split it amongst themselves. Kodesh Kodashim, it is most sacred, he lahem, it is for them. Now, it could be that by saying that, Rashi is saying that they have to treat this flour, this meal offering, as a most sacred thing, meaning on a very high level of holiness and purity, and that they have to be in a state of purity. It has to be eaten, possibly. We'll have to see, it would have to be stated elsewhere, but essentially that there are all kinds of limitations that are involved in the consumption of this meal offering. Me'ishe Hashem, from the fire offerings of the Lord. Ein lahem chelek ba, right? So he says from the fire offerings, and what's happening is Rashi is pulling apart the me'ishe from the fire offerings of the Lord. Ein lahem chelek ba, they cannot take a portion of it. Ela la'achar matanot ha'ishim. So only after the presentation of the fire offerings. So it only comes into their possession then after they've had a chance to, after the, I imagine he is talking, whether he's talking here about the general, all the fire offerings, or whether he's talking about the fire offering, in other words, offering up the meal offering on the altar and causing it to burn. So I'm not certain. It's, for me, this is ambiguous, because what Ishim he refers to here, does he mean all the fire offerings? It's quite possible. If anything, I'd probably lean to that, as opposed to just the burning of the meal offerings. So, to be clarified at some later point. V'chi takriv korban mincha ma'afe tanur. And if one offers up a sacrifice of a meal offering that is baked in an oven. So what we were talking about up to this point was simply a meal offering that consists of the raw flour, so to speak, and the oil and the frankincense. And of course, later on, it talks about the fact that this has to be done also with some salt. It has to be salted, okay? So here we're talking about something that is baked, okay? So solet chalot, they are made of fine flour, loaves, matzot, unleavened loaves, blulot bashemen, mixed with oil, or rikikei matzot, or wafers, unleavened wafers, meshuchim, which would be smeared bashamin, with oil. So two types of baked offering here, baked flour, one either unleavened loaves or unleavened wafers. V'chi takriv v'gomer, and should you offer up, etc. So what are we talking about? That he, in deciding to go ahead and make this formal presentation in the sanctuary, he stated, Hare alai minchat ma'afe tanur. He said, he made a declaration saying, essentially, Hare alai means, I take upon myself, and a mincha of something that is baked in an oven, right? A mincha that is baked in an oven. V'limeid hakatuv, and Scripture is teaching us, sheyavi ochalot, that if he makes such a declaration, he's now under an obligation to bring either loaves or rikikin or wafers. Hachalot blulot v'harikikin mishuchin. With regards to the loaves, they have to be mixed, and the wafers are supposed to be smeared. That's how they're to be brought. V'nechaluku rabotenu, and our sages were in disagreement. They disagreed amongst themselves. The meshichatam, regarding putting the oil, how they were to be smeared, literally, right? Yesh omrim, there are those who say, so this is referring then, I think, to the wafers. There are those who say, moshchan v'chozer u'moshchan, that he smears and he continues to smear them, ad sheyikaleh kol hashemen shebalog, until all the oil is used up, this log of oil. So here is the modern day equivalent of what a log of oil is. They also sometimes talk about a liquid measure called a hin, which is, as you can see, it would be 12 times as much. Okay. So, shekol hamenachot, he says, regarding all the meal offerings, to unot log shemen, they all require this amount of oil, a log of shemen. So, in other words, about half a liter. V'yeshomrim, and those who disagree with them say, moshchan kemin kaf yavanit, they have to be smeared in the form of a kaf yavanit, which is a chai, of a Greek letter chai, which is an X. That's what it looks like. Usha'ar hashemen, and the rest of the oil, it always has to have a log of oil accompanying it, regardless. So the rest of the oil of this log, ne'echal b'fnei atzmo la-kohanim, it is eaten separately by the kohanim. So there's a disagreement as to what the Torah is requiring us to do here. Ma Talmud lomar, Bashemen, Bashemen. What is Scripture trying to teach us in that it uses Bashemen twice in this verse? So let's take a look so you can see it yourself. Okay. Here, Blulot Bashemen, first time, right? And then it uses the term Bashemen a second time. Lahachshir, so what he's saying is that the reason why it uses this, it makes appropriate shemen sheni, second oil, ushlishi, and third oil, hayotze min hazeitim, which comes out of the olives. So the olives would be pressed more than once, and because they could extract more oil every single time, but clearly the more you start to press the olives or crush them, etc., even though you might filter what's done and filter it out to get as pure an oil as possible, there's always going to be some particles in the oil. And so what happens is the very first pressing is the cleanest, the clearest pressing. And he's going to say that the Ein Sarich Shemen Rishon, we don't require only the first oil for the oil of menachot, ela lemenorah. The only time we require the first oil is for this burning of the, in the menorah, for the light of the menorah, shene'emar bo zach, because when it talks about the oil for the menorah, it says shemen zayit zach, meaning clear olive oil. V'shaninu b'menachot, and we learned in the tractate Menachot, so there's a tractate in the Mishnah called Menachot, Kol ha-menachot ha'afuyot, all those menachot that are baked, lifnei kmitzatam, before they are then, this kmitzah is taken from them, v'nikmatzot al yedei petita, right? And they're also, when the komets is taken, that is done because they're broken into pieces. So the wafers or the loaves would be broken into very small pieces, and then from that the komets would be taken. Kulam ba'ot eser chalot. So they all require 10. You have to bring 10 of these. Okay, so chalot, so the loaves, so it would have to be 10 loaves. Va'amur ba'rikikin, and referring to that when it talks about wafers, ba'eser rikikan. You bring 10 wafers. So it's always an amount of 10 to bring in an offering when it's baked, when it's something baked.
So is that
Yeah.
why you're supposed to take some of the challah before you bake it and take off a piece of dough to burn or something like that? And if it is also, is there specifics on measurements related to 10?
Okay, so actually, it's a separate mitzvah that's stated elsewhere as the dough offering. And this would go to the priests. This would refer not to an offering being brought on the altar. So we'd
Okay.
have to separate it from the offerings, this situation where you're essentially offering this up on the altar. And from what we see here, the owners don't actually get any of this. They don't consume any of it. Whatever is consumed by the priests. But as far as the dough offering is concerned, which by the way is called challah, right? It was for personal consumption, and you were supposed to take a portion of it and give it to the priest. It was a perk for the priests. And it's mentioned as one of the perks that the priests get. I believe in the book of Numbers, it's mentioned after the incident of Korach.
So, and the word
There's a
challah
name. Yes.
is loaf, the
Yes,
same word mentioned here
I
as
believe so.
loaf?
Yes, right. It is. I mean, I can double check it, but yeah, I'm pretty certain. Right. Okay. So, yeah. But so just to make sure I'm clear about that with you, yes, there are amounts mentioned in terms of this halacha of taking challah. And it has more to do with the amount that's taken from, in other words, the amount you have to have that is then requires challah. There's a minimum amount of dough from which challah is taken, and I think there's also some discussion with regards to the amount taken by a baker, someone who's baking bread for distribution and sale, as opposed to personally what you do. And my understanding as far as today is concerned, and of course, because it can't be given to priests, that's why it's burned. Okay. I don't believe it's given to priests nowadays, period, because there is no temple. But when you're personally baking bread, you just take off a certain amount. And there's actually a bracha associated with lahafrish challah, to separate off challah, that it's a mitzvah, that you're performing a divine commandment when you do that. So I'm going to stop the share right now. Okay. So any thoughts before we sign off? Okay. Thank you.